My name is Maya Ellison. I am 41 years old, and 4 days after I sent $7.4 million into escrow to restore my mother-in-law's childhood mansion, my husband informed me that I would not be attending his younger sister's wedding. He did not shout. He did not hesitate. He stood beside the marble island in the kitchen of the house I had purchased 6 years before I met him, loosened his tie, and delivered the news with the calm efficiency of a man confirming a dinner reservation. "My mother thinks it would be better if you stayed home," Julian said. "She says you make people uncomfortable." For 11 years, I had paid hospital bills, tuition balances, property taxes, charity pledges, legal retainers, and one very expensive mistake involving my brother-in-law and a vintage sailboat. I had done it quietly because the Harcourts admired discretion almost as much as they depended on other people's money. And now, holding a glass from the wedding registry I had personally paid to complete, I finally understood what my generosity had purchased. Not love, not loyalty, not even a chair. Only temporary access. I looked at my husband and said, "Understood." 47 minutes later, I called my attorney. The conversation lasted less than 4 minutes. I never raised my voice. I never threatened anyone. I simply gave one instruction: to understand why one quiet phone call caused that much damage, you need to understand where I learned to be useful. When I was 13, my mother worked nights in the laundry department of the St. Arden Hotel outside Macon, Georgia. Her name is Rosa Ellison. She is 5 feet 3 inches tall, has arthritis in both wrists, and can still fold a fitted sheet with the precision of an engineer. The hotel paid her barely enough to keep the electricity on, so during school breaks I went with her. At 10 o'clock each night, we entered through the loading dock. The banquet rooms smelled of perfume, spilled bourbon, and flowers beginning to die. Upstairs, wealthy guests slept under white sheets that my mother had lifted, sorted, washed, pressed, and folded without ever being seen. She had one rule: "Never leave a stain for the next woman," she would say. At the time, I thought she was talking about linens. Years later, I understood she was teaching me something larger. Do not hand your mess to someone with less power. Do not pretend a problem disappears because another person has been forced to carry it. And when you finally walk away from something, leave behind truth instead of confusion. At 17, I earned a scholarship to study operations management. At 23, I bought a used delivery van and started Ellison Environmental Services with 1 pressure washer, 2 commercial vacuums, and a borrowed office inside the back room of a tire shop. My first clients were restaurants that needed overnight sanitation and small clinics that could not afford national contractors. I cleaned kitchens until dawn and wrote invoices after sunrise. I slept with my phone on my chest because every call might be the one that kept us alive another month. By 30, I had crews in 3 cities. By 35, we held infection control contracts with 2 hospital systems and emergency response agreements with half the counties in the state. Today, the company employs just under 900 people. Our teams clean trauma rooms, flood-damaged schools, airport terminals, laboratories, and buildings where one mistake can shut down an entire operation. Every dollar I have can be traced to a shift, a payroll, a bid, a failed contract, a repaired machine, or a night when somebody called at 2 in the morning and my people answered. I am not embarrassed by the work attached to my money. The Harcourts were embarrassed enough to hide its source but never enough to refuse it. They preferred that the money arrive without me. I met Julian when I was 30. His private banking firm occupied the top 2 floors of a historic building downtown, and my company was bidding on a specialized sanitation contract after a mold problem. I was inspecting air returns in a conference room when he walked in wearing a navy suit and a smile that made attention feel like warmth. Julian Harcourt was handsome in the effortless way of men who have never had to explain why they belong somewhere. Tall, measured, beautifully educated. He remembered names, sent handwritten notes, and knew exactly how long to hold eye contact before it became intimacy. On our 3rd date, he took me to a family dinner in Savannah. Julian's mother, Vivian Harcourt, received me in a drawing room the color of weak tea. She wore pearls, pale silk, and an expression that suggested the furniture had already reported on me. She asked where my family was from. "Near Macon," I said. "My mother worked in hotel laundry for most of her life." I watched the information settle. Nothing moved on Vivian's face, but the temperature of the room change. "D. How industrious," she said. Then she turned to Julian and asked whether he had confirmed the club reservations. Later that evening, I heard her introduce me to 2 women beside the fireplace. "This is Maya," she said. "She does commercial cleaning." At that point, my company employed more than 300 people and had annual revenue larger than the Harcourt Family Trust had been worth in its best year. But Vivian had placed me in the category she required: service. I should have believed her. Instead, I decided she needed time. That was the first expensive mistake. Julian and I married 18 months later. Vivian gradually took control of the ceremony without ever asking for control. The florist changed. The church changed. The guest list expanded by 80 names and somehow lost 12 of mine. Each alteration arrived wrapped in such polished language that objecting made me seem unreasonable. I chose one battle. The first seating plan placed my mother near the catering doors with 2 distant cousins and the photographer's assistant. I moved Rosa Ellison to the center table beside me. Vivian studied the revised chart for a full 10 seconds. "How modern," she said. My mother wore a deep green dress and danced until her knees forced her to sit down. There is a photograph of us from that night. We are laughing with our foreheads together, both of our hands visible. Hers are swollen from decades of heat and detergent. Mine are marked by the pressure washer trigger I held through my 20s. Neither of us is hiding them. I was not careless about money when I entered the marriage. My company had existed for 7 years before Julian. My home, investment accounts, and business interests remained separate. My accountant documented everything. My attorney, Henry Shaw, reviewed every major transaction. There was no prenuptial agreement because the Harcourts never suggested one. I think they assumed the valuable thing entering the marriage was their name. I assumed the valuable thing was love. We were both wrong, although only one of us would eventually pay for the misunderstanding. The requests began before our first anniversary. A storm damaged the roof of a small museum operated by the Harcourt Historical Foundation. Insurance would not cover all of it. Julian came to me looking worried, not asking directly, simply explaining the situation while rubbing his thumb along the edge of his phone. I offered to cover the shortfall, $39,000. The relief on his face felt like affection. That feeling became addictive. Then came his sister Celeste's graduate school tuition. Vivian said student debt would be inappropriate for a Harcourt. I paid $96,000 over 2 years. Julian's older brother, Miles, needed help resolving a dispute after crashing a borrowed sailboat into a private dock. Between legal fees and repairs, I spent $71,500. There was the family burial ground, where rain had damaged the stone wall. There was the restoration of a chapel window bearing the Harcourt crest. There were gala tables, auction purchases, annual pledges, club assessments, emergency tax payments, and a quiet transfer when Julian's firm had a poor quarter, and he did not want to reduce his lifestyle in front of his colleagues. No one demanded. That would have been easier to resist. They explained, they sighed, they looked briefly vulnerable. Then Julian would say, "We don't have to solve this tonight," in the exact tone that meant he hoped I would solve it before morning. And I did. Every payment seemed to improve the weather. Vivian used my name more warmly for a few weeks. Celeste sent flowers. Miles invited us to the club. Julian became affectionate in the grateful, glowing way he had been when we first met. Then the weather changed again, and another invoice arrived wearing the face of family need. If you have ever confused being needed with being loved, you know how difficult that pattern is to see from inside it. Need is immediate. Love is harder to measure. Need calls your phone. Love may remain quiet. For someone raised to earn every safe corner through usefulness, the urgent request can feel more intimate than the steady hand. My mother saw it before I did. One Christmas, after I paid for a catered dinner at Vivian's house, Rosa watched me give the staff envelopes containing bonuses. "You tip like you're asking forgiveness," she said. "For what?" She looked toward the dining room, where the Harcourts were discussing family history, beneath a chandelier I had recently paid to rewire. "For arriving," she said. I laughed because the truth had touched a nerve, and laughter was cheaper than changing my life. Vivian gave me the clearest warning in our 4th year of marriage. The Harcourt Foundation held a benefit at a restored theater. My company sponsored the event. We paid for the musicians, the flowers, the food, and a preservation grant that allowed the foundation to announce a successful yay. "Lar," a local reporter asked, what motivated my support. I said I believed institutions should be honest about who keeps them standing. That was all. 5 minutes later, Vivian guided me into a corridor behind the coat check. Her fingers rested lightly on my arm. Her voice remained gentle. "Public generosity can become vulgar, Maya," she said. "Established families do not discuss the machinery." The machinery. That was what I was to them. Necessary, powerful, and best kept out of sight. I asked, would the event have happened without the machinery? Her smile sharpened by 1 degree. That is precisely why discretion matters. Then she returned to the ballroom. I stood alone beneath a buzzing wall light and understood the arrangement with painful clarity. My money could preserve their institutions, rescue their relatives, polish their reputation, and restore their properties. But acknowledging its source would disturb the story they told about themselves. For several days, I considered stepping back. Then Julian told me his mother respected me more than she knew how to express. He said old families moved slowly. He said I should not confuse tradition with rejection. I wanted to believe him, because disbelief would have required me to account for years of evidence. So I kept paying. I also kept records. Since the first year of my company, I have maintained a dark blue ledger. It began as a practical tool because my mother believed writing a number by hand made it harder to lie to yourself. Every personal payment above $1,000 went into that book: date, purpose, amount, recipient. Roof repair, $39,000. Celeste tuition, $96,000. Miles legal settlement, $71,500. Family cemetery wall, $24,800. Chapel restoration, $58,000. Foundation pledges, year after year. Julian's car, $112,000. Club assessments, enough to make me embarrassed now, though embarrassment belonged to them at the time. I believed the ledger documented devotion. In reality, it documented a subscription. The Harcourt's deepest longing was not a person, it was a house. Harcourt House stood on a shaded square in Savannah, 3 stories of pale stone, green shutters, iron balconies, and a walled garden where generations of family photographs had been taken. The original portion dated to the 19th century. The entrance hall contained a carved staircase imported from Europe. A plaque beside the gate carried the family name in letters larger than the street number. Julian's grandfather had mortgaged the property repeatedly. His father had lost it after a failed shipping venture and years of hidden debt. The family never used the word foreclosure. They said the house had passed out of the family, as if it had wandered away during a storm. Then, in early spring, the property returned to the market. The asking price was $7.4 million. 3 days after the listing appeared, Vivian invited me to lunch alone for the first time in 11 years. She chose a table beside the windows at a private dining room overlooking the river. She asked about my mother's health. She remembered the name of my operations director. She complimented a hospital contract my company had recently won. Only after dessert did she mention the house. She described it as a rare investment. She said it would become part of the family legacy. She spoke about future grandchildren, holiday dinners, preservation, continuity, and healing. When I told Julian about the lunch, he acted surprised for approximately half a second. Then he began explaining how the purchase could be structured. The property would appreciate. We could use an LLC. Vivian could occupy it without owning it. The family could host foundation events there. It would strengthen my standing in Savannah. That last promise came late at night. We were lying in bed when he said, "After this, no one will ever be able to treat you like an outsider again." He knew exactly where to place the knife. I closed my eyes and imagined Christmas in that house, my mother beside the fireplace, my name spoken without hesitation, a family photograph in which no one positioned me near the edge. The next morning, I called Henry Shaw. Henry had been my attorney since my company's first acquisition. He was 62, spoke in complete sentences, and distrusted enthusiasm on professional principle. When I told him what I wanted to do, He removed his glasses and asked, "Are you buying real estate, or are you purchasing a change in human behavior?" "Real estate." That answer arrived too quickly. I did not respond. He structured the transaction anyway, but he protected me from the part of myself that still wanted to call the purchase a gift. Ellison Property Group would buy the house. Title would remain with my company. Vivian would receive a lifetime occupancy agreement, subject to maintenance rules and taxes. No Harcourt would own a percentage. No family trust would receive an interest. Most importantly, the purchase agreement included a broad inspection and diligence period, during which the buyer could withdraw and lose only a $42,000 deposit. Julian approved the structure immediately. That should have warned me. Ownership was not what his family wanted. Ownership required responsibility. They wanted the photograph, the address, the dinner invitations, and the illusion that history had corrected itself. The contracts were signed on a Thursday. The following Tuesday at 9:15 in the morning, I authorized the transfer of $7.4 million into escrow. I watched the confirmation appear on my laptop. My chief operating officer, Nadia Brooks, stood in the doorway with a folder against her chest. Nadia had been with me for 14 years. She knew every major contract, every difficult client, and every version of my silence. "You did it," she said. "I did." "Do you feel like family now?" The question was not cruel. Nadia never wasted cruelty. She used accuracy. "I feel like the owner of a house," I said. She nodded. "That part I believe." Closing was scheduled for the end of June, 10 days after Celeste's wedding. The family planned to announce Vivian's return to Harcourt House during the wedding weekend. There would be photographs at the gate, champagne in the garden, and a private dinner for people whose approval had apparently required a 7-figure renovation of history. That Tuesday night, I could not sleep. Around 1 in the morning, I went downstairs, opened the safe in my study, and took out the blue ledger. I added the newest line. Harcourt House escrow, $7,400,000. My pen remained on the page after I finished. Then I read backward. 11 years of dates and amounts, problems solved, faces relieved, whether temporarily improved. For the first time, I looked at the pages as though they belonged to a client whose accounts I had been hired to audit. The pattern was obvious. Payment followed by access, payment followed by warmth, payment followed by another request. No equity, no security, no permanent change in status. I had not been building a home inside that family. I had been paying membership dues to a club that reserved the right to remove my name from the list. I closed the ledger without saying the thought aloud. Some truths become dangerous the moment they are given language. The wedding invitations had gone out the previous week. People posted photographs of them online. Ivory paper, dark green ribbon, an embossed crest, hand-addressed envelopes. Celeste was marrying a man named Andrew Bellamy, whose family owned land, newspapers, and the confidence that usually accompanies both. Our mailbox remained empty. On Friday morning, I sent Celeste a message. "The invitations look beautiful. I'm so happy for you." She read it within minutes. She did not answer. That afternoon, Nadia found me rereading the same contract. You negotiate with hospital boards, she said. You have closed buildings during disease outbreaks. Do not become frightened of a sentence because it is spoken in your kitchen. At 6:30, I came home. Julian was opening a bottle of wine. His jacket was draped over a chair. Music played softly from the speakers. The scene looked so ordinary that I almost accepted it as evidence that nothing was wrong. I set the mail on the counter. Did Celeste's invitation go to your office? I asked. Julian's hand stopped on the corkscrew. There are moments when a marriage reveals its entire structure in one hesitation. He looked at me, then at the bottle. There isn't one for you, he said. I waited. He exhaled, as though I had forced him into an unpleasant administrative task. My mother and Celeste think the day will be easier if you don't come. Easier for whom? Maya, please. What reason did they give? His eyes met mine. They think you make everything feel transactional. Mom says people are uncomfortable around you because you always have to remind them what you've done. I actually looked around the kitchen, as though the absurdity might have entered through a side door. 4 days earlier, I had transferred $7.4 million to restore his mother's home. The refrigerator behind him had been selected by Vivian during a renovation I financed. The wine in his hand came from a club whose annual dues I paid. His sister's education, his brother's settlement, his family's foundation, their cemetery, their chapel, their car, their public history, all of it contained my money. And I was too transactional to attend the wedding. Julian continued. It's one day. Celeste wants things calm. Mom feels you sometimes change the atmosphere. I told them you understand. You told them that. I know you. You're practical. Practical. That was the word people used when they needed me to absorb pain without making them witness it. He stepped closer. Please don't turn this into a war. It's a wedding. I looked at him for a long time. Something inside me stopped. Reaching. Not broke, not collapsed, simply stopped. The blue ledger opened in my mind, every line finding its correct category. I said, understood. Relief passed across his face. He kissed my temple and asked whether I wanted pasta or fish for dinner. We ate fish. I asked about his day. He discussed a difficult client. He told me which tie he planned to wear to the wedding. I cleared the plates, washed my glass, wiped the counter, and went upstairs. At 7:22, I opened the safe. At 7:24, I called Henry Shaw. He answered on the third ring. I need you to terminate the Harcourt House purchase, I said. There was a pause. Tonight. Yes. You will lose the deposit. I know. Do you understand that once notice is delivered, reversing course may not be simple? I understand. Then he asked the question I had paid him to ask for nearly 2 decades. Are you certain? I looked at the blue ledger. The last line was still dark and fresh. I have never been more certain about an expense. Henry said he would send the notices immediately. Before we ended the call, he added, for what it is worth, $42,000 is an unusually low price for accurate information. I almost laughed. It may be the first Harcourt bill I consider a bargain, I said. The termination notices went to the seller's counsel, escrow company, broker, and title office before 8 that evening. The funds began the formal process of returning to Ellison Property Group. No accusation accompanied the paperwork. No explanation was required. I did not destroy anything. I simply declined to complete a purchase. People imagine revenge as something dramatic: shattered glass, public speeches, secrets released at dinner. But the most powerful decisions in my life have resembled shutting off equipment at the end of a shift. Find the switch. Confirm the system is safe. Turn it off. That night, I slept for 9 uninterrupted hours. Julian slept beside me, unaware that the future he had promised his mother was already dissolving in an escrow account. Saturday morning, he made coffee and acted tender. He believed I had accepted my place. He touched my shoulder when he passed, asked whether I wanted to spend the wedding day at a spa, and suggested we take a trip later in the summer. Sunday evening, he laid his charcoal suit across the guest room bed. "Green tie or blue?" he asked. "A blue." He smiled. "That's what Mom said." Then, as casually as possible, he added, "If anyone asks why you weren't there, just say you had a business emergency. No need for details." No need for details. The Harcourt family's religion could have been summarized in that phrase. I looked at the suit I had paid for, the cuff links I had given him, the shoes selected for a wedding I was forbidden to attend. "I'll keep it simple," I said. On Monday, I met with Henry's family law partner. On Tuesday, my accountants separated the few shared household arrangements that existed. My company had never deposited money into a marital account. My house remained solely mine. The car Julian drove had been a gift, and I accepted that gifts do not return simply because gratitude never arrived. I did not act from anger. Anger is fast and untidy. I acted from the calm that appears after a decision has survived the night. By Wednesday, the records were assembled. By Thursday morning, I knew exactly what the end of my marriage would cost. At 10:46 that same morning, the broker called Vivian. Within minutes, my phone filled with calls from Julian, Celeste, Miles, and finally Vivian herself. In 11 years, Celeste had never called me before 9 in the morning. Vivian had never called me directly at all. Money had finally made me urgent enough to contact personally. I let the first 9 calls go unanswered. On the 10th, I stepped into an empty supply room and answered Julian. "What did you do?" he demanded. "I am at work." "The house. Maya, what did you do with the house?" "I withdrew from the purchase." "You cannot be serious." "I am." "My mother just heard from the broker. She is devastated. Celeste is hysterical. Everyone already knows we were getting it back." "Away." "You know what I mean." "No, Julian. I know what I meant when I signed the contract." His voice rose. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?" There was the family word again. Humiliation. They used it whenever reality became visible. I kept my voice level. "It is one property, Julian. Try not to make it into a war." Silence. For the first time, he heard his own cruelty without the comfort of being the speaker. "You did this because of the wedding." "I made a financial decision. after receiving new information. That is exactly what my mother meant. Everything with you is money. I looked through the small window in the supply room door. A nurse pushed a child past us in a wheelchair decorated with paper stars. My employees were waiting at the end of the hall. No, I said. Everything with your family becomes money when you need something from me. Then I ended the call and returned to work. Julian came home before I did. When I entered the kitchen, he was standing at the island, the same place where he had excluded me from his sister's wedding, with both hands pressed against the stone. He began with outrage. He accused me of humiliating his mother and making the family look foolish. I listened until anger ran out of language. Then came negotiation. Put the money back into escrow, he said. We can delay closing. We can discuss the wedding after. Celeste can make room for you. Make room. You know what I mean. I am trying to understand exactly what you mean. His shoulders dropped. Come on, Maya. This family is complicated. No, it is expensive. That is different. He flinched. I asked, when your mother decided I was too embarrassing to attend the wedding, did you defend me? He stared at me. I tried to manage the situation. That was not my question. You know how she gets. That was not my question either. Maya, there were already tensions. Did you say, my wife comes with me or I do not attend? His silence answered. I nodded once. For 11 years, I had mistaken his reluctance to hurt me for loyalty. In truth, he simply disliked conflict. He would stand beside whoever made resistance most inconvenient. That evening, I moved into the guest room. The next week revealed the Harcourt social system with almost scientific clarity. A foundation board postponed my nomination to an executive committee. A couple who had invited us to dinner every month suddenly became unavailable. A woman from the Preservation Society sent me a gracious note explaining that philanthropy works best when donor expectations remain aligned with institutional values. No one mentioned the house. Everyone mentioned values. I stopped renewing. The Harcourt Foundation gala table disappeared from my calendar. So did the Preservation Fund, the Heritage Lecture Series, the club scholarship that had never selected a student from the neighborhoods where my employees lived, and 3 smaller committees whose primary activity seemed to be photographing one another beside donor walls. I did not withdraw a dollar already promised. I simply stopped applying for admission. Nadia reviewed the list with me. That frees almost $600,000 annually, she said. I know. Where should it go? I thought of my mother sorting hotel sheets at midnight. I thought of the children who waited in parked cars while parents finished cleaning shifts. I thought of employees who could repair sterile room equipment but could not help their sons navigate college applications. Set it aside, I said. I have an idea. Before the idea became a plan, Vivian invited me to tea. Vivian received me in the same drawing room where she had first classified me as commercial cleaning. The same portraits watched from the walls. The same silver service rested on the table. She poured tea with steady hands. There has been unnecessary confusion, she began. Has there? Celeste was under extraordinary pressure. Wedding planning makes young women say things they do not mean. Julian said the decision was yours. A small pause. Julian often simplifies delicate matters. I almost admired the elegance of it. Responsibility moved around that family like a silver tray. Everyone touched it. No one carried it. Vivian placed her cup down. The house can still be recovered. The sellers are willing to reopen discussions if you act quickly. I know. Then we should focus on repairing what has been damaged. What has been damaged? For the first time, irritation entered her face. Trust. Whose? Maya, must every conversation become an examination? Only the ones that involve millions of dollars and my marriage. She leaned back. If you restore the purchase, I will make certain you are included on Saturday. Not merely included, properly received. I will speak to Celeste. I will explain to the family that you acted from hurt and that the matter is resolved. There it was. The invitation had a price. For 11 years, I had suspected the arrangement. Vivian was now kind enough to state the terms. I asked, what exactly would I be receiving in exchange? Her expression hardened. A place in this family. I have been married to your son for 11 years. Marriage gives one a legal relationship. Belonging is more subtle. And $7.4 million makes it less subtle. She looked at me with something close to pity. You cannot purchase history, Maya. I smiled then, not because it was funny, but because the final locked door had opened from the inside. You are right, I said. I wish you had told me before accepting payments toward it. Vivian's face went still. I stood. She said, if you walk away now, people will believe you Ray never generous. They will believe every gift had conditions. People already believe whatever protects them from looking at the conditions they placed on me. You will regret acting emotionally. I have spent my entire adult life reading Operating Risk. This is the least emotional decision I have made in years. At the door, I turned back. I hope you understand something, Vivian. I am not taking your house. It was never yours. I was considering buying it. Those are not the same sentence. Her eyes narrowed. You will always be an outsider. This time, the words did not wound me. They released me. Yes, I said, and for the first time that sounds like good news. The following morning, Henry showed me the divorce petition. I signed it. Celeste's wedding was Saturday. On Saturday morning, sunlight filled my kitchen. I wore jeans and an old company shirt because I planned to spend the afternoon with my mother. Julian came downstairs dressed in a dark suit, blue tie, polished shoes, and the cuff links I had given him on our 5th anniversary. He carried an ivory envelope. He placed it on the island between us. Mom reconsidered, he said. I looked at the envelope. My name had been added by hand. Celeste wants you there, he continued. Everyone does. We can leave in 40 minutes. What changed? He looked tired. Do we have to do this now? Yes. He rested his fingers on the envelope. If you call Henry this morning and tell him to reopen negotiations on the house, Mom is prepared to put everything behind us. Everything. My exclusion, their dependence, his silence, my humiliation. All of it could be erased with a phone call and $7.4 million. He pushed the invitation toward me. This is our chance to make the family whole again. I looked at the elegant paper, the embossed crest, the handwritten edition. For years, I had imagined receiving exactly that object. I had imagined my name inside their traditions, my place confirmed in ink. Now the envelope looked like an invoice. "Wait here," I said. I went to my study and opened the safe. I returned carrying the blue ledger, the signed petition, and the title research file. While reviewing the file, one of his paralegals had found a newspaper clipping from 1983. The photograph showed a young woman named Vivian Mercer standing beside a hotel banquet table. She wore a server's uniform and held a tray of champagne. The caption identified her as a local hospitality worker engaged to Thomas Harcourt. Vivian had not been born into the family whose standards she used to measure me. She had entered through a service door. Then she had buried that entrance so completely that she punished anyone who reminded her it existed. I placed the clipping in front of him. "Did you know your mother worked in hotel catering before she married your father?" He frowned. "What does that have to do with today?" "Everything. She never talks about that time. I understand why." "Maya. She entered this family through the same door I did. She worked, she adapted, she learned every rule, and then she spent the rest of her life guarding the door against anyone who reminded her of where it was. That is unfair. No, it is sad." He pushed the clipping away. "She became part of the family." I looked at him. "Yes," I said, "and look what she had to remove from herself to stay." He shook his head. "You are turning this into something it is not." I spent 11 years turning it into something it was not. I opened the blue ledger and slid it across the island. "Read." He did not move. "Read it, Julian." His eyes dropped to the pages. He saw the roof, the tuition, the legal settlement, the cemetery, the chapel, the galas, the club fees, the car, the tax payments, and the final escrow transfer. Date after date, amount after amount. 11 years written in my hand. His face changed slowly. Not guilt at first, recognition. He had experienced those payments as separate acts, each one reasonable in isolation. The ledger placed them together. Patterns become undeniable when they are denied space between them. "I never asked for all of this," he said. "No, you explained until I offered." "That is not fair." Neither is pretending relief was gratitude. He looked at the final line. "I loved you. I believe you loved the version of me who made your life easier." That is cruel. It is accurate. I placed the divorce petition beside the ledger. His eyes moved from the papers to my face. "What is this?" "You know what it is. You filed for divorce." "I signed yesterday. It will be filed Monday." He looked toward the clock, then toward the invitation. "You cannot do this on Celeste's wedding day." "I am not doing it at the wedding. I am doing it in my kitchen." "This is insane. We can discuss this after the ceremony." "We have discussed it for 11 years. We just used different words. He pushed the petty iron back toward me. I am not signing anything today. You do not have to. Maya, stop. Please come with me. Let everyone see that we are fine. We will solve the house next week. Let everyone see that we are fine. Appearance first, truth later, the Harcourt order of operations. I removed my wedding ring and set it on top of the petition. His eyes fixed on it. The invitation is right there, he said, almost desperately. You wanted this. I wanted to belong without being purchased. No one is purchasing you. I touched the blue ledger. No, I was purchasing them. He looked down at the totals. I said, I thought this book proved how much I loved your family. It proves how long I kept paying after the answer was already clear. His voice became quiet. So that is it. That is it. What am I supposed to tell them? The truth would be new. He flinched. Then he picked up the invitation and held it toward me. For one brief moment, the old hunger moved inside my chest. The girl in the hotel laundry saw the heavy paper, the beautiful clothes, the promise of a room where no one would ask her to enter through the loading dock. I placed both hands flat on the counter. My mother's hands lived in mine now. Strong fingers, short nails, small scars, proof of labor that no family name could improve. I am not available for purchase anymore, I said. Julian stood there, holding the invitation. Then he looked at his watch. He was late. That single movement ended whatever remained of the marriage more completely than any argument could have. Faced with the collapse of our life together, he checked the time because the ceremony still mattered more than the truth in front of him. He left. The door closed. The kitchen became silent. Not empty. It was mine. The petition was filed Monday morning. The divorce took 6 months. There was almost nothing to fight over because I had spent years keeping business and marriage in separate columns. Julian kept the car, his personal accounts, and the gifts I had given him. I kept my company, my home, and the future I had nearly mortgaged for his family's approval. Henry called the settlement one of the cleanest he had handled. I told him cleanliness was a family tradition. Celeste's wedding was described as perfect. I sent no gift. It was the first Harcourt event in 11 years that cost me nothing. The money I had previously directed toward their foundations became the beginning of something else. 6 months after the divorce, Ellison Environmental Services announced the Rosa Ellison Night Shift Scholarship for children of custodians, laundry workers, sanitation crews, home health aides, security guards, and other employees whose work is most visible when they are absent. The first year, we funded 32 students. We held the ceremony in a community college auditorium. The chairs did not match. The microphone failed twice. There were no crests, no society photographers, and no table arranged according to family rank. My mother handed each student an envelope and looked every parent in the eye. One father still wore his hospital maintenance uniform. A woman from our airport crew cried when her daughter read the award letter. 2 brothers took turns photographing their mother beside the scholarship banner because she had cleaned offices for 23 years and had never before seen her work connected publicly to opportunity. Afterward, a reporter asked how much the fund had cost. I thought of Vivian's saying respectable people did not discuss machinery. Then I looked at my mother in her green dress, surrounded by families who knew exactly whose labor had brought them into the room. Enough to open the door, I said. Not enough to own anyone who walks through it. My mother heard me and smiled. I eventually stepped away from daily operations and made Nadia president of the company. She had earned the title years before I admitted I was ready to release it. I kept the chairmanship, the scholarship work, and one rule for every executive team meeting: never leave a stain for the next woman. Months later, Julian sent one final message. He wrote, "I understand now that I should have chosen you." I deleted it. My life is quieter now. On Saturdays, I drive to my mother's house. She makes chicken with rice and complains that I buy groceries as though a storm is coming. Sometimes we visit the scholarship office and clean the front windows ourselves. She works inside. I work outside. Our hands meet through the glass. The first time we did it, I saw our reflections layered over the gold letters bearing her name. Rosa Ellison, Night Shift Scholarship. My mother touched the glass. "You finally put money somewhere it knows how to behave," she said. "That may be the best financial advice I have ever received." Here is what I learned, and it cost more than I wish it had. A relationship that values only your usefulness will keep inventing Risa. NS for you to prove it. A seat that disappears when you stop paying was never a place of belonging. My name is Maya Ellison. I was excluded from a wedding 4 days after transferring $7.4 million toward a family dream. I canceled the purchase, ended the marriage, and stopped confusing access with love. The invitation arrived after the money disappeared. By then, I no longer wanted the seat. Maybe you have been paying for one too, not with millions, but with silence, favors, apologies, endless second chances, or pieces of yourself you keep promising to replace later. Look carefully at what happens when you say no. The reaction may tell you more than years of gratitude ever did. Share this story with someone who needs permission to stop earning the love they should have received freely. Tell me in the comments what line finally made you recognize your own worth. Subscribe to After Silence Stories, and I'll meet you in the next episode, where another quiet woman discovers that leaving the wrong table can be the first step toward building her own.